Hello.
Hey, yay. Can you hear me? Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
I
Yes.
cannot hear you.
Oh dear. So Jude says she can hear me.
Yes.
Can't hear you, Laura.
Okay. Is your sound up? You can't hear me ask the question.
Now,
Can you can there? Okay.
Oh, can you hear it now, Connor?
I can hear Laura. Is someone else talking?
I can.
Jude?
Can you hear me?
There. Yes, now I can.
Okay. So I did not send an email today to remind everybody, but I called Ed. So I didn't send an email, but I didn't know whether I can try calling Ed again. I don't know if anybody talked to Ed about whether he's coming today.
I did. He said he had the right link, but maybe he didn't. So I'll have a look. March 11th.
Yeah, I think I sent him the link too, but he did say you sent it.
Well, I didn't send the link this time. I think it's the same link. And it's right, it's on the town calendar. So, but I knew I didn't need to remind either of you about the meeting because we've been talking about it. But it doesn't do text, I don't think. So anyway, I can try calling him again.
Yeah, all I can say is I know he was planning on attending as far as I know. So.
Yes. Agree.
Okay. So let me. I'm going to go on mute.
Okay.
Step away for a second.
So Ed is on his way. Oh,
Okay.
we have somebody else in there. Oh, there we go. There's Ed. I'm admitting Ed right now.
Great.
So yay, yay, yay. So as soon as we see Ed. So we're all here, all of our current committee. Let me just make my notes here. Jude and Ed. Okay. All righty. And so I see we have two guests so far, but we may have more. All right. And I'll wait till Connor comes back. And then we'll officially get going. And Jude, unfortunately, my day got busy. I did not read ahead of time what you had sent. So just to let you know, I'll be looking at it for the first time now, but that's fine. So Connor, we're all here is that all is here that we need here. So let me just make a note. 6:35 start. So and what I will say, I know we only have 2 visitors at the moment, but I know that when we do at the end, we'll do public be heard. And we people went for a while before. So we are going to try, same as the town board, public be heard be 3 minutes per person. And then if you get your 3 minutes done and anybody else wants to talk, talks, then we can maybe loop back around. And if something's going to be a long conversation, people can call me after the call. So in any event, I may announce that again if we have more people join later, but we do plan to, we'll plan to focus the public be heard comments that we have at the end. So that's the plan there. And with that, and we have Connor, we need Connor back again. He's probably within earshot, but
I am right here. I'm just putting a couple things down on the table. Be right back.
Okay. Connor's dog is the stand-in.
Yeah. I wonder what his dog thinks about these things. So I wonder how he'll vote. He may be a she though. I forget whether his dog is a he or a she.
I got one of each, so.
Oh, one of each. Okay, okay. So the first thing I did want to mention before we get into the STR is I did want to mention scenic overlay, as a bunch of us have been talking about. Scenic overlay law, proposed law, will be the public public hearing will resume tomorrow night at the town board meeting. And as I've talked with Jude, and I forget if I talked with Connor, but and I know Ed, there was an email that the ZRC sent around because Supervisor McKenna and I have both been getting calls from people that are concerned that they can't maintain their view. So we understand that if people are doing new development and they're going to go take down a pile of trees, we have our scenic overlay proposed law to make sure that we're making sure that new development is done responsibly regarding the viewscape. But there are people who already have a view today that have been weighing in that they would like to have some clause that says they can maintain their view. So I know when the email went around the ZRC, the feedback from the three of you was keep the proposed law the way it is. But two messages. One message is the town board, because it's going to the town board may choose to add a clause, is the one message. But the other message is if we add a clause that allows people to maintain the viewscape, it can perhaps be done with the requirement of a permit, so that at least a permit where at least the building inspector is looking what's done before it gets done. And as somebody who called me today said, her concern was that when you have all these scruffy, if you have an open area, then you have all these scruffy, spindly little things grow up. And maybe we should consider that you can cut down something less than 2 inches in diameter, because that's a scruffy thing. Our goal is to keep the viewscape looking good. And maybe there are some things we could do to allow people to clean their woods that still maintains the viewscape. Like if it's a tree that's less than 2 inches, how do we feel about that? And how do we feel about the idea of a permit? Maybe we don't want to have a clause where people can just do, be on their honor to do, their maintenance. But if they get a permit, there is somebody taking a peek before they do it. So I just want to raise those in case anybody had any comments, because again, it is with the town board. The town board will see what comments come in, but we already know comments have been coming in. So even if people, and some people, what I'm hearing is some people are hesitant to speak out and have their names known at the public comment or the review, but we know that they have the concerns. So even if they don't speak out, Bill and I still know they have the concerns because they've been talking with us. So I just wanted to pose I'm just hearing the wind all of a sudden whistling. Anyway, so I just wanted to pose that in case anybody had any final thoughts as we go into the town board meeting about either permitting to allow people to maintain their current view, or adding a clause that says, I mean, I think your feedback already was you prefer not to have a clause that says people can maintain their view, but I didn't know what you thought about the permit idea.
Well, I'll jump in and say, I think, I'm not sure, maybe I'm not understanding correctly, but a permit idea seems like, a very slippery slope to me. I don't see under what the prerogative is, to permit these things. I also, I think one of the biggest criticisms of the law going into this discussion of the existing law was how sort of relatively outdated it was, more so than it didn't fairly explicitly, if not, maybe not as detailed as we would have liked, laid out the details of, what does qualify as the scenic overlay. But from there, I'm left to wonder, like, why are we have 3 generations on this house. And I mean, again, I haven't had to take anything down that wasn't in immediate danger. And I'm not, if I wanted to, I could cut this down and say, there's a great view right there that I could enjoy. But like, I don't know. I mean, it's at some point.
Well, but the idea again would not be to permit somebody taking down something to create a new view, but somebody who has purchased their property and it has a view, and they say, hey, I'm just maintaining my view. So the idea of a permit would be they would have to show, the building inspector would go up and take a look. They would have to show, here's what I'm going to cut and trim. So it would be clear that it's only going to be to maintain a view. By having a building inspector go look at it, they can say, hey, if you're cutting down a tree that's, that's, a foot in diameter, then you're probably not just maintaining your view. If you're cutting down a 2-inch little spindly thing, then maybe you are maintaining your view. And if you're limbing a couple of trees because you can see the tree and it's grown up here, and you just want to take a couple of limbs off because by having the building inspector go up and look, they can get the sense of what the person has as a view. And over 10 years time, stuff grows enough that they want to maybe trim it back. So that would be the idea of the permit, is you'd have a pair of eyes, which is a building inspector, go look at it. And it wouldn't be to permit building a new view. It would only be to permit, say, hey, I bought this house that had this view. I just want to trim a little here and there just to keep my view. So, and if the building inspector thought that they were trying to do more than that, he would deny the permit. And that would be the idea of it.
I'm still a no on that. We can hear from the rest of the board though.
Okay. Well, anybody's welcome to chime in, but I will say the town board, because once the ZRC has recommended the law to the town board and the town board owns it, the town board may decide to, the town board will respect the ZRC opinion, but the town boards may have a different opinion. So that's just kind of a heads up that on that one topic. I think the rest of the law is looking good. So, but that, I just want to give a heads up on that. So, okay, go ahead, Jude.
I think I mentioned to you earlier that used to be that you could see road cuts going up and down Needs Mountain. You could see when those houses were put in, and the trees had grown up and kind of shielded that. So we don't see that anymore. So I think when the scenic overlay law was put in, it was trying to slow down that kind of opening up of the mountain for the people who are looking up and what they see.
Sure.
So, I think it's kind of a natural thing that trees do grow, and it kind of is going to mitigate some of that damage that was done originally, that the scenic overlay was put in place to try to prevent. So, a little bit of growth might slightly alter somebody's view, but I don't know that, perpetuating everyone's view of a house up on the mountain is in the town's best interest. And as I had said to you, maybe if it's a permit that goes to the planning board and they can, assess if it's going to, I mean, there are some people who are in the scenic overlay who can easily trim trees and no one will ever even know because they're not visible. Right. But, the ones that we're all looking at, it might be better if they grow a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And that's fine. So I can be clear about the ZRC's position, but just a heads up, the town board can have a different position, and we'll see where it goes on that one topic. I think the rest of the law, I haven't heard any feedback to oppose any other part of the rest of the law. So I wanted to talk this through a little more, which we've done. And I don't know, Ed, you're welcome to weigh in if you want, but you don't have to if you don't want to. And you're on mute, so whatever you're saying, we can't tell.
Ed, if you drag your mouse to the bottom, I think for computers, it should pop up.
Mine is up.
And I'm clicking on the ask to unmute button. I don't know if that'll help anything pop up for you. Oops, now I just asked Connor to unmute. I think I just, Connor, I think I just muted you.
No, I muted myself. I mute myself when I'm not talking.
I think I'm unmuted now.
You are not
muted. No, I can hear you, Ed. Thank you.
Anyway, Alf Evers points out in his book on Woodstock that all the trees on Overlook were basically cut down especially all the hemlocks, for the beaver industry and the beaver hat industry in the 18th century and 19th century. So, and his Alf Evers painting of the shady church and the hill going up to the top of to Lake Hill showed that the forest was totally gone.
Mhm.
And this was a painting made in the 1940s. So go on then 50 years or 60 years from that, there's a lot of trees. So we're faced with, for the scenic overlay, with an always growing vista of trees, which is one of the purposes of the scenic overlay, is to provide beautiful forest trees there. So I would agree with Connor on this, but it's not the end of the world if the board, I would use the word succumbs or agrees with some Woodstockers who want to have a way to sign a way out of that. So
I mean, I would, you know, again, I would support writing a letter, you know. I mean, it can be drafted really quick, just expressing our view on this.
I've already spoken to Bill, because I already spoke to Bill because I saw everybody's feedback to when the first proposal to say, hey, maybe we can allow some maintenance of a view, and you all said no. So I've already explained to Bill that the ZRC as a body is not looking to change the proposed law. So I mean, you could write a letter if you wanted, but Bill already knows as a body. So it is the proposal that's going forward, and then we'll just see where it goes now that's with the board. And whether or not people do speak out tomorrow at the public hearing, since Bill and I both have been receiving feedback, we still may be discussing the feedback we've received without naming names, because we'll see who chooses to come forward tomorrow. But even if they don't, we know people have already come forward because we've been talking with them.
Well, all I can say to that is, you know, I want to see, because if I'm not able to attend on Tuesdays, I have to work and I would like to just, you know, feel confident that, you know, on that subject, you know, that was how the board felt, and that be addressed at the public hearing, particularly because I think, you know, knowing that is important to the math that the public needs to do on this.
Right. Yeah. Okay. I mean, I can certainly speak to that. I can speak to that the ZRC as a body prefers to not change the proposed law, and then we'll just see how the conversations go. So, okay. All righty. Well, the main topic of tonight, as most meetings, is the STR. And I know I did speak with Jude earlier today, and Jude had commented. And since we have more people on, I'll just restate what I said, is the public comment for this meeting is at the end. Well, unlike the last meeting where I think one speaker talked for 15 minutes, we will look to have public comment at the end be 3 minutes apiece. If anybody who wants to speak has done so, then you might be able to go again. But in any event, we'll try to make sure that the public comment is focused when we get to that point of the meeting. And sometimes he will put in a sentence here or there as we go along. But and like I've done in the past, if it starts to hijack the meeting, then I pull it back and say, hey, we'll postpone those conversations to the end. So in any event, we will have a public be heard at the end of this meeting. And that being said, Jude, I know you'd worked on some things, and did you want to share your screen, or how did you want to handle things, Jude?
Oh, well, I had sent a lot of information that was sort of background, but, you know, I think maybe we should just dive into the law. So if you want to share your screen, because you make notes.
Oh. Sounds good. So I'm looking for what you had sent me, right? Because you had sent me a draft.
I sent a draft.
And let me go.
I think it said ZRC draft STR law and definitions. Might have been.
Yeah. Okay. Well, hang on a sec, because I'm going to first just do a search on your name.
So I think that, you know, there was a lot of supporting material explaining how this was written and derived. And at some point, hopefully people will look at that, but we can discuss it as we go through if you want
Sure.
to, where some of these ideas came from. And
okay, well, hang on. It may be faster for me to be going here. I think oh, so it's the one that you just sent at 5:30, draft STR law and definitions.
Right. And all the other materials were supporting materials. They were data and other laws and letters from different people and maps and all kinds of.
Sure, okay. So I'm opening the file. And what I need to do before I share my screen is, there we go, get rid of that. And I'll be ready to share in a moment. There we go. So there's the law, and here are all the people, so we're good. And let me just, I'm trying to, whoop. Trying to get back here. Because usually I can widen this so that I'm seeing more people, but it's not really working. I usually have but that's okay. We'll just show grid video. Oh, there we go. That's much better. So I can see lots of people now. Yay. Okay. Alrighty. So we're going to go through, and first thing, 9 pages. We've got 9 pages here. So, and this is what Jude, as Jude and Ed volunteered at the last meeting to go off and do some thinking about definitions, and came up with a whole law, a whole starting point kind of law that we can read through. And what I do want to do before we're finished with the whole process is look at the current law and say, hey, of the current law, did we include everything here in this proposed law that we want to? And were there things in the current law? Because one question is, what problem are we trying to fix today? Because when this STR law first came out 5 years ago, however many years ago it was, at the town board meetings, it was a common theme, people to come in and complain because their streets were being overrun with people that don't live there, and who were disrespectful and leaving trash and making noise. And I haven't really been hearing any of those issues, except I am hearing issues of people saying, well, they know of somebody who got evicted because their landlord wants to do a short-term rental and they were a long-term tenant. So that problem I know is still existing from what I've been hearing. So in any event, but we'll go through this, and I can let me do enable editing first off.
Yeah, we did come up with a list of objectives, and I was going to send out some additional ones, but we did come up with a list of objectives why we were doing this.
Right.
We did send it out at one point. So, and we did look at the current law.
Yeah.
I think I said we looked at the current law. We looked at the short-term rental committee. We looked at their law. We looked at their report and their suggestions. Looked at what Butch and Williams said. Looked at a number of other laws in the area and in the region. There was a lot of research done coming up with this, but we did look at the Woodstock law. And
Yeah.
I think,
we started out with the Woodstock law. The first draft,
good.
I did the first draft based on the Woodstock law. And then
Okay.
I worked with Jude to put in a lot of the additional language that really makes the law much more spiffy and much more definite as to what its goal is and what we want for the town of Woodstock.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so we'll go through this. Now, what I am going to do quickly is I'm in favor of, I'm just looking down through how many sections we have here. So we've got the basic stuff at the end. Oh, and we have definitions at the end.
I will also say I read this already, like in the interim. So as you need to go through it for the sort of, I'm happy to discuss it once we've gone through it in its entirety, or however you want to do it.
Okay, so if it's okay, does it make sense to start with definitions? So as we read it, we know what we're talking about? Okay, so, okay, accessory dwelling unit, a subordinate dwelling unit having its own kitchen and bathroom facilities located either within the confines of the principal residence, including the garage, if attached thereto, or within a detached accessory structure as defined 26060 of the chapter, meeting all the requirements in habitable space. as required by the New York State Uniform Fire Prevention and Building Code. So that sounds like a pretty standard definition.
Well, that's there because there is no definition for an accessory dwelling unit. It's accessory apartment, the way it is now.
Correct.
We need, so since there's reference to ADUs. Okay.
Yep. Okay.
The bed and breakfast establishment and the bed and breakfast home are exactly as they are in the law now.
Okay. So let me just read bed and breakfast establishment, supplementary business unit, supplementary business use having a resident host in a private single family or two family residence in which at least 3 and not more than 5 rooms are offered for rent within the private residence, and only one meal breakfast is furnished to roomers in which no public restaurant is maintained. No other commercial services are offered. The bed and breakfast establishment shall not have more than 10 occupants as lodgers. Oh, well, there we have a number. I know we're talking about STR, but there's a number. Bed and breakfast home, and of course that's not, we're dealing with STRs here, but we're level setting with bed and breakfast. An accessory use having a resident host in a private single family or two family home in which at least one or more or not more than 2 rooms are offered for rent within the private residence, and only one meal is furnished to roomers. No public restaurant is maintained. Bed and breakfast home shall not have more than 4 occupants. So the bed and breakfast establishment clearly is larger. At least 3 and not more than 5 rooms, and if they have 1 or 2 is the home. Resident owner, an owner who is a natural. So I'm laughing. That's cool, but I'm curious where the definition came from.
I took it from another law.
Okay. So the resident owner who is a natural person and not an artificial entity, and who an artificial entity might be an LLC, for example.
Right. I think yes, it is mentioned in there that they have to identify themselves as people. And
Okay.
that's a lot of laws in a lot of different towns.
Yeah. Okay. And I appreciate all the research you've been doing. So an owner who is a natural person, not an artificial entity, who resides in the dwelling on a year-round basis, as demonstrated by a New York State STAR exemption registration, voter registration, tax returns, and government-issued proof of residency and owner identification, passport, driver's license. The resident owner, might we add to that, because some people don't have a passport, driver's license, but they have an identification card. Is there such a thing? Because somebody might not have a passport or driver's license.
Well, there's a county ID.
Mhm.
Or passport, driver's license, or government issued ID. Would that be okay?
Government issued ID is probably the best way to
ID. Okay. Okay. The resident owner must live on the premise during all rentals. Okay. Now this is interesting. So the resident owner then can't be, we talk about the people that leave for January and February to a warmer climate and come back. So we're saying that they could not be a resident owner.
Right. There's different categories.
Okay.
And this is just defining them. We're sort of, by doing the definitions, we're getting ahead of ourselves, but we can go through them. And this next section you had asked for.
Well, hang on. Good. Okay. This next paragraph. A parcel that is contiguous to the owner's year-round primary residence and is owned by said owner shall also qualify for a resident owner designation if the building department determines that the owner is able to monitor activity on the contiguous property. That's cool. I like that. Okay, so I'm going to keep going. Short-term rental description, and this is the general, and then we have the categories, I think. An accessory use or supplementary business allowing a short-term rental less than 30 consecutive days of at least 1 room in a private home or habitable accessory structure, which we haven't said ADU, or we defined ADU before, but we haven't used the term ADU. Okay. Okay here, of at least 1 room in a private home or habitable accessory structure. Property owners seeking to operate a short-term rental must apply for and receive from the town of Woodstock a short-term rental registration permit and post the Woodstock registration number on all online listings. Registrations are good for 1 calendar year, and the total number of properties owned by or in which an interest is held by an individual person or entity offering STRs is limited to 1. So what's interesting is, as I had mentioned to Jude earlier when we talked a little bit earlier, is that today, whereas the total number of properties, well, yeah, so it is the total number of properties. So somebody might have more than, so somebody might be renting out more than 1 bedroom, because they can only have one property, which is considered an STR. Although in that property, they might be renting out more than one bedroom to more than one party, so to speak.
You know, I would like to maybe consult with Butch about this a little bit, because we had a brief conversation about some of these things, and just clarify how they're handling all that. Maybe
Right, okay. Okay, but so we're saying the STR goes with the property, so somebody could actually be having, and this probably gets into this because apparently the STR establishment today allows, I think, up to 5 bedrooms. And so somebody might have more than one unit or might have more than one party renting the different things, because it goes with.
I don't think that's allowed. I think you can do one rental at a time.
Okay. So, well, we'll kind of keep going
Yep.
for a sec.
Yep.
But I like this definition the way you have it, to say that the total number of properties owned by or in which interest is held by an individual person or entity offering STRs is limited to 1. Now, when we say entity, so that acknowledges it could be an LLC.
Right, an LLC can own the property, yes, but they have to identify themselves.
Right. Should we
As a
add
person.
should we add anything that says that LLCs must identify owners and that owner then is limited to 1?
That's in the body, I think.
I would it be helpful to have it in the definition?
Sure.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and add. And I'm thinking maybe I should be adding in a color. I think I added something else that wasn't in a color. Or entity or STR is limited to 1. Or say any entity that is not must identify.
Yeah, good.
Say. All right, and I am going to put it in blue because I think it's kind of nice to see
Mhm.
what the change is. And I'm going to also go up to the top because I already did. Where did I put that before?
You put the government issued ID or something in there.
Oh, right. I put that in. Thank you.
The STR definition.
Thank you. Oh, we even the previous paragraph.
That didn't turn blue, but
No. Oh, it didn't. Oh, that's odd. Huh. That's odd. I don't know.
There you go.
There, it turned blue that time. So let me go find. Because we just did that. Oh, resident owner, that's where it was. There we go. Alrighty. So then we have the different kinds, and we have resident occupied, accessory dwelling unit, limited, and full house. So those are the
There's an ADU.
Yeah, the ADU. So we've got and are these, so these are actually not in alphabetical order. Are they intended to be in an order of sorts?
They're in the order that they appear in the document. But you're right, they probably should be in alphabetical.
Well, I guess if I were.
Yeah, no, they should be in alphabetical order. You're right.
Well, except for the fact that what I might do is put them in order, like type 1 is like the owner occupied we're happiest to have, and maybe make that type 1. And type 2 so maybe give them type numbers and do alphabetical order by type 1, 2, 3, 4, but have them in the order of the
Like escalating use. This is that they're kind of in that order now, I think, already.
Yeah, that's how it is in the document.
Okay, so okay, so so Connor, I think we have some help from your house. some other voters. You have some other voters in your house. Are you okay if I add type 1 and just because, and then if we want to change the types, so it'll be alphabetical order of type.
Sure, why not?
So,
And this goes in a different section entirely. So if it gets clarified, that's good.
yeah, so, okay. So resident occupied a supplementary business in a private home in which 1 and not more than 2 bedrooms are offered for rent within the private residence with shared kitchen facilities. No public restaurants maintained, no other commercial services are offered. Each STRRO home shall have no more than 2 guests per bedroom as lodgers. STRRO home shall not have more than 4 occupants as lodgers. Homes must comply with all STR standards in or referred to in 26056. The owner of an STRRO home must live in the home and be on the premise during all rentals. Okay, so I'm okay with that. Accessory dwelling unit. And I'm just kind of looking at what the other choices are. So full house would seem to be the escalating use. So the accessory dwelling unit, supplementary business and habitable ADU, either attached or detached, in which 1 and not more than 2 bedrooms are offered on the private residential property. No public restaurant is maintained. No other commercial services. Each unit shall have no more than 2 guests per bedroom as lodgers. The STRDU shall have no more than 4 occupants as lodgers. Must comply with all their standards. The STR ADU establishment must live on the property and be on the premise. So the difference between our type 1 and type 2 is this is still the owner's on premise, but they're renting something out that has a kitchen.
Well, it's the first one is you're renting a room in your house and you're sharing your house with a person, right? You're renting a bedroom.
Right.
This is a separate entrance, not a kitchen necessarily. It's a separate entrance, right?
Well, I think the way I've seen it defined in different is it's shared kitchen facilities. It doesn't have its own kitchen. You're sharing your home, basically.
The first one you're sharing your home.
Yeah.
You're sharing your home. So it's a room in your house, which some people do. They just rent out a room. And the second one is for accessory dwelling units, either attached or detached. Which
Okay.
we already have in the law. So it's just, again, definitions from other places. And
okay, well, let me kind of read it again here. Habitable accessory dwelling unit, either attached or detached, in which 1 and not more than 2 bedrooms are offered in the private residential property, which no public restaurant is maintained. I'm kind of looking, other commercial services have no more than 2 guests per bedroom as lodgers, and no more than 2 bedrooms, no more than 4 occupants, must comply with all their standards. So I guess, so here's what I'm tripping up over. So it's not clarifying. Neither of these talk about whether it has a separate entrance or the same entrance. This one just says it's within the private residence. Kitchen facilities are shared. This one, it's either not within the private residence or does not have a shared kitchen facility is what this is. If one of those 2 things are true, then we're calling it, but the STR says it has a kitchen facility. So by definition, the one that says STR would have a kitchen facility because that's the definition of ADU. We just defined ADU up above and it says it has a kitchen.
Right. So we're talking about an ADU. Now, so for example, someone was there last week who said they didn't really have a kitchen, but it is definitely an ADU. It's its own apartment.
But understand. But let's go back to the definition of ADU: subordinate dwelling having its own kitchen and bathroom facilities, locating either within the confines of the principal residence, including the garage, if attached thereto, or within a detached accessory structure as defined, blah blah blah. This chapter. So it clearly says an ADU has its own kitchen and bathroom. That's an ADU.
That's the way it's defined. Accessory apartments are defined in the law now. that's what makes an accessory apartment in the law now.
Well, we can call this something other than an STR ADU, but if you're going to call it an STR ADU, you need to follow the ADU definition. So either you call this something other than an ADU, but the ADU definition is consistent. We don't want to be inconsistent with the rest of the world. And I can tell you from my experience on the Housing Oversight Task Force that the rest of the world refers to an ADU as having a kitchen. So I don't want to have us have our own definition of ADU and be out of step with the rest of the world. So
Right,
that
and you want to add the kitchen to this, that's fine.
right. So so we're saying the distinction then is type 1 does not have its own kitchen, type 2 does have its own kitchen, but you're saying type 1 is in the private residence with a shared kitchen facility, and type 2 we're saying has its own kitchen. It may be in the same building, or it could be outside of the main building. So I'm not sure whether, I guess here's my thought is, well, I'm still working through what my thought is, sorry.
First one says it's within the home.
But you have more things that can happen, and it would be nice to not have more than 4 categories. So if you're going to have resident occupied, then if you're going to have resident occupied, then I'd like to have everything fit in one of 2 categories. And the first one has not more than 2. I mean, I might rather not care whether or not they have their own kitchen facilities, because maybe they have a microwave, maybe they have a mini fridge, maybe they have a toaster oven, and somebody might say that's a kitchen, because we haven't really defined kitchens. So I might rather say you're either in the private home and you use the same front door as the homeowner who's living there, or you have your own door. And if it's your own door with your own kitchen, then you're an ADU. But if you're, I don't know. It's just I'm feeling like we're not covering all bases, and if we're not covering all bases, there can be confusion.
I understand what you're saying, but again, there's a lot of borrowing from other places, and the resident occupied to me is very clearly you're renting a room in your house. It is not an apartment, where an ADU is clearly an apartment. It's a separate living facility, either attached or detached.
Mhm.
They are 2 different things. And I think that, like, for example, Kingston does not allow any STRs in ADUs, period. So it was trying to differentiate between something that's within a home, you're renting a room,
Mhm.
and an apartment that is either an accessory apartment that is either attached or detached, which is how they're defined in the law now, is accessory apartments attached or detached.
Well, I'm okay with having STRRO being just as you described it, and
Mhm.
have type 2 being resident occupied on premise and everything else. But the way you have it defined, you're leaving room for things that don't fit in either category. So if you want to say resident occupied RO, you've got 1 and not more than 2 bedrooms offered for rent, shared kitchen facility. They use the same front door. That's RO. And if we say everything else falls in type 2, then I wouldn't call it an ADU, because it might not be an ADU. That's all I'm saying. If something has a different doorway, it might not be an ADU, because if it doesn't have a kitchen, it's not an ADU by the definition. So I just don't want to call something an ADU. If somebody has a separate doorway, but they have no kitchen, by you're saying you're going to call it an ADU, and I'm saying the definition of an ADU says it needs a kitchen. So I'm okay having this be the separate doorway, whether or not it has a kitchen, but you can't call it an ADU, because as soon as you call it an ADU, it's got a kitchen.
So what do you think it would be?
Well,
I'm sorry, if it's not within the house and it's not a separate apartment, what is it?
Well, what I want to read just real quick. This is the American Planning Association definition of a accessory dwelling unit. An accessory dwelling unit, ADU, is a smaller independent residential dwelling unit located on the same lot as a standalone, i.e. detached single-family home. ADUs go by many different names. They go through it, secondary suites, granny flats. ADUs can be converted portions of existing homes, i.e. internal ADUs, additions to new or existing homes, attached ADUs, or new standalone accessory structures, or converted portions of existing standalone accessory structures, i.e. detached ADUs. Now, I hadn't heard the kitchen portion of that definition before, but the shared entrance is really just, you know, the quickest way I always thought to understanding the difference between, say, you know, detached, all these things. The common thing is that none of them would have a shared entryway. So that's kind of why I thought use that language originally.
So what's in our zoning law now is that an accessory apartment is defined as having its own kitchen facility. We also have something in the town that allows for guest cottages. And the distinction is a guest cottage does not have a kitchen. So it's just a bedroom and a bathroom.
Well,
So,
there
you know, you can work out however you want to do this. I was just trying to allow, to make sure that there's an allowance. We had spoken about this, and
Yeah.
that there's an allowance for people who have some sort of accessory structure, be it detached or attached, that they can have a short-term rental in it if they live on the premises. And, you know, that's something we've discussed a number of different times, because I think the HOTF said no for the picture, which we only have one at this point. If you have a better way of defining this that you think will be more clear, but I just wanted to make sure that we were allowing for that.
Well, so I might rather, I might rather say, what I would do is, because the whole point is both type 1 and type 2 are resident occupied.
Right.
So I might rather say, add the word like shared, because I think the point is that we're sharing here. And of course, everything I do here, I can undo, but let me just kind of go with it for a sec. So type 2 is, I'd say resident occupied separate, because that's what we're saying. Is the whole point is it's separate.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
In which case you wouldn't call it an ADU, because then we don't have to worry about and I think I'm misspelling separate here. Resident occupied separate. And in which case now they're both would be STR shared. Right? They're both shared and separate. I'll say SHR. Whoops.
You know, I would, okay.
RO, STR, RO, SHR is in share, and STR, RO, SEP, because it's separate. So then we're saying a supplementary business habit dwelling accessory unit, either attached or detached. Okay. With an entrance that is separate from the main.
So what if I have an attached apartment, but we both share the same front door?
Well, so here we're saying, yeah, because oh, well, you're right, because that was my whole reason for saying, yeah, entrance that is shared separate from the main entrance of the house, and or has kitchen facilities.
Okay.
Right. And or has.
Oh.
Okay. So in this case, we're saying up here, you have a shared entrance and shared kitchen facilities. Here, you're saying we have this entrance that's separate and or has kitchen facilities. It has its own kitchen facilities, and which no public restaurant is made, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So I think that everything falls in one of those two categories.
Okay, so then you have to change at some point, we can go back and change that STRO-SHR and STRRO-SEP, those categories, you have to add them into the actual definitions. But that we can go back and do that later.
Oh, well, but I use the word shared, I think.
No,
The word
saying
sh-
the second to last line says the owner of an STR-RO home.
oh, right,
The
right.
house. That's what all I was saying is we have to change them within the definition if you're going to change what it's called. That's all.
Right.
I'm doing that a lot because it's in there a lot. It makes
Okay.
sense.
Yeah, okay. So,
Okay.
okay. So then we added, I'm making these blue,
That's fine.
blue, where did it go? Okay, blue. And then down here, ROSEP, STRROSEP. And I think we only have to change it once. Okay. So
It's up further too, where you have after kitchen, the line below kitchen facilities right there. Yeah.
yeah, there we go. All right. Okay. So we're going to do a save. Okay. So
There's
now
one
we.
right below that too.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, there we got another one.
Yep.
Okay, cool. Okay. So now the other question I want to ask, so we're saying if it's a resident occupied, you've also said they can only have you can only offer 2 bedrooms.
Mhm.
And I don't know, Connor and Ed, are you agreeing that the resident occupied, because then we say, if it's more than 2 bedrooms, it falls in one of the other categories, whether or not the resident is home. So if the resident is home, we're restricting to 4 guests, which seems like a big restriction from today.
I mean, it's hard. I don't know how many bedrooms you could really even have in an ADU in the first place. I mean, before it becomes sort of a second building, you know, like, and
But even this resident occupied shared, only 2 bedrooms. Well, what if somebody has a 5-bedroom house? So you're telling they can only rent out 2 of their bedrooms? Why can't they rent out 5 bedrooms if they want? Why can't they rent out 4? They're going to live in 1. If they have a 5-bedroom house, why can't they rent out 4? So it seems
It's probably the exception rather than the rule. I guess, Laura, this goes back to what our purpose is here, and the whole idea of what we're trying to do with the resident occupancy is allow people who live here to be able to most people, I don't think it's going to be a commonplace thing for people who need the income to be renting out more than 2. Who wants to have 4 lodgers or 8 lodgers in their home if they're living there? Again, I took that from another law. I was just going by how other people and other towns are taking a really hard look at this, and they're coming up on the side of trying to control it and not have it be a hotel. And I just think if you're talking about short-term rentals, you're talking about people coming and going. And if you have 8 now, 2 in each bedroom, now you've got 4 cars. It just changes the whole feeling of what's happening. And as I had said to you, I've found even more laws where they limit to only 6 lodgers, period. For it doesn't matter how big your house is. They just feel like that keeps control on what happens in a neighborhood.
Well,
so, I guess we have to look at what are we trying to do here? Again, it goes back to community, not commodity. And I think that, when you're talking about people coming and going, 1 or 2 bedrooms, it's not going to be a big intrusion in a neighborhood. But if you're talking about 4, that could change the way things feel. But that's my 2 cents. Again, looking at other laws and seeing how other communities have handled this.
So I guess, I mean, I think it's limiting to say, I mean, we're trying to, if somebody is resident occupied, and they are there, we've all been agreeing that we want to let the resident occupied person have a lot of latitude. And it sounds like we're being more restrictive. I'd have to go look at the current law, but my sense is we're being more restrictive by saying you only get 2 bedrooms.
Well, couldn't you be a B&B then? If you want to have however many rooms, then you're.
Well, the B&B says you're serving breakfast, and so the STRs don't always serve breakfast. And that's kind of the difference is the B&B establishment, the B&B is, and that would be the other choice, is to say, just like you have a B&B establishment and a B&B home, you're serving breakfast, and you have 1, not more than 2 bedrooms, and a B&B establishment says you have 3 and not more than 5 rooms. So the other option is we just say, we just don't worry about what you're sharing. And we say, if the owner's occupied, if you have 1, not more than 2 rooms, you're whatever the one thing, you're the home. And if you have 3 and not more than 5, then you're the establishment. I mean, that is the other way to cut it. But to limit everybody to having no more than 4 renters, I mean, I'm not looking to cause.
Well, I guess the other thing is it's not really more than 4 renters. It's more than 4 short-term renters.
Right.
And that's
correct.
the other part of this. So,
and I'm not planning to open up my house, but I will tell you I have a 4-bedroom house. So it just seems odd that, if I'm home.
I keep bringing this up that, anybody can rent whatever they want for 30 days or more. You want to rent a month at a time, and I know there are places that, they have moving houses and they rent by the month. Then you can do that. The idea here was to make this the least restrictive, to not, the fees would be lower, the oversight, it would just be easier to get. They'd be unlimited. They would be, you could renew it on a yearly basis because it's restricted to a smaller impact on an area. So,
okay, so
I personally want to stick with that, and then that's my take.
So what do we call the resident occupied who's renting more than 2 rooms? Do they fall into the short-term rental limited now? So they fall in one of these other 2 categories? Because I don't want to say somebody can't rent more than 2 rooms. Just where do we put them in our definitions then?
I think we've talked about this, and this is one of those things that I said to you, I don't know that we should necessarily get stuck on right now, because again, I have found so many laws where you can have a 10-bedroom house, but if you have an STR, you're limited to renting 3 of them. It's just a perspective that towns are taking on this and trying to get it under control. So no, I'm just saying it. That's what a lot of places are doing. You can have 6 guests, 3 bedrooms, 2 to a room, 6 guests total. And it is a way of trying to dial back what's become out of control. And, if you look at Woodstock compared to every other community in Ulster County, we are so out of proportion with what we're doing. And this is just an effort to try to say, okay, here's an opportunity for you. First of all, it would be very interesting to see how many people are actually doing this. I'm assuming not that many. But it's hard to tell. I did a breakdown according to what I could find from the building department, their Excel spreadsheet about the STR permits that they have. But again, it's trying to dial this back a little bit. The number of days that you can rent. I think I sent out something that was the options that you have to try to control this is you can cap the total number of nights, you can cap the number of permits, you can restrict by proximity, you can restrict by zoning district, and you can restrict by occupancy. And and I just think we have to look at this because I know that people are, I think a lot of people have just given up because they call the police and nothing happens. But Marsh, I just want to say, Laura, that I don't think you can minimize the effect that these have on a neighborhood. And you know, the fact that you are living essentially next to hotels, and it changes the way a neighborhood and a community functions. And so by, you know, the original accessory dwelling unit, accessory apartment law was to try to provide people an opportunity to earn a little more money so that they could stay on their property. They weren't really running a business. They were just trying to give them another avenue to have some income. And that's what this is. It's not that you're running a hotel, because when you start talking about 5 rooms, that's a hotel. That is no longer a home. And I, you know, so I mean, I am feeling very strongly for these two, especially right now. An accessory apartment is limited to 800 square feet. That's the way the law is now. And it's also limited by the size of your house. So some of them are only 600 square feet. So the idea that they would be much more than 2 bedrooms is not very likely. And most of them are 1 bedroom. You know, they're meant to be, you know, a guest cottage or what, for guests or relatives or whatever it is. So right now, you know, from what I could see from the spreadsheet that I looked at, there are 14 of them that are being used as STRs. It's not, you know, I think a lot of people who have them are not using them this way because they want them for their own personal use, or they're renting them long term. But I just feel really strongly that we have to control this, because I personally, and when I moved here, never anticipated that I would be living next to a constant stream of strangers coming and going, pulling into my driveway because they're confused about what home they're in, and, you know, and walking down the street and not knowing who lives on my road. And, you know, and that's a big part of my motivation. And then the other part is, you know, we're looking at this is like, this has swallowed up a lot of long-term rentals. So this is trying to give a little latitude to people who actually live here. And we had spoken about, you know, they may not want a long-term renter for various reasons. It's giving them that opportunity, but it's not saying, here, rent a hotel in your house. You know,
Well, okay. So you feel strongly. I also feel strongly. I feel strongly that I don't want to limit. I want to add to one of these 2 resident occupied definitions that you can go up to a 3rd bedroom. I believe restricting to 1 or 2 is taking away what people have today. And so I would put it in this type 2 to say either it's, you know, because again, if it doesn't fit in 1 and your resident occupied is type 2. So you feel strongly, I also feel strongly, but opposite, because I feel that we ought to go up to 3. 5 could be too many if you're going to have a resident occupied, but I do believe saying now you only get 4 people, and I don't care how big your house is and whatever. And we're trying to fix, I mean, there are ways to fix the problems, because you're totally right. Problems going to happen. As I mentioned to you, I had an STR next door to me for a while. And so when people walked on my property because they didn't know where the property line was, I made sure that part of the law said the owner's got to tell where the property line is, and that solved the problem. So there are ways to solve these problems other than being so restrictive that we're taking away what people have today. So I'm concerned about taking away what people have today. I want to put under resident occupied a 3rd bedroom ability somewhere. I would put it in type 2 because type 1, we want to say, hey, really, you're really not impacting the world much at all. Type 2 has a little more impact to the world. And I would put the 3rd bedroom in here. So that's.
So you're assuming that in an apartment that's 800, 600 square feet, there's.
Well, not an apartment, because we're saying you're either in a private home. All we're saying here is if you've got a kitchen, if you have a different entrance, or if you have a kitchen, if you have a separate entrance and or your own kitchen facility, then you're a type 2. To be what we said before was type 1, you share an entrance and you share a kitchen. If you share an entrance and you share a kitchen, and you have no more than 2 bedrooms, you're type 1. We're said that type 2 means you either have a kitchen or you have a separate entrance. Either one of those pops you into type 2. And I'm saying that maybe you have a kitchen facility, or if you have a 3rd bedroom, I'm saying add that to type 2. I'm not in favor of being so restrictive that we're taking away what people have today, because we're trying to some degree, whether somebody lets somebody live in 2 rooms or 3 rooms in their house is not going to affect whether or not we all of a sudden have another long-term rental. Because if I've got a 4-bedroom house or a 5-bedroom house and I want to rent out 3 bedrooms, I wasn't going to long-term rent those bedrooms anyway. So it's not like we're helping the long-term rental situation, and yet we're ratcheting back what people are allowed to do. And we do have a noise ordinance. So if all these people are unruly, you know, we can change it. So I'm not accepting the 2-bedroom restriction for if you're resident occupied. I think that we need to allow,
There are-
Ed has his hand up.
Well, I don't think we should have a rule in the STR that any language in this new STR law should be more restricted, should not be more restrictive than all the language in the current STR. We are looking to revamp and rewrite the entire STR law. And if one or more of the new rules is more restrictive than what's in the current law, that's the way it'll have to be. But we cannot say as a rule that everything we do has to pay attention to all the regulations now in place.
Okay, well, and I am not agreeing with limiting, if the resident is occupying the property, I'm not agreeing to the 4-person limit and the 2-bedroom limit. I'm not agreeing to that. So Connor, you want to say something?
Well, I mean, I think I do, understand, it feels kind of arbitrary, but when you do start to look at the realities of what an accessory dwelling apartment or accessory, all these detached structures, like what the biggest effect is, you're looking at 1-bedrooms, mostly 1-bedrooms. And to be able, to go into a place like that, or even your own home, your whole home, and rent more than 2 bedrooms at a time. I've seen longer term situations like that were sometimes sustainable for like a bunch of kids sharing a house while they went to school or something like that. But again, in the spirit of essentially what this is supposed to be, which is something to supplement your income, we've also seen that it's not really the government's responsibility to maximize that amount, especially weighed against the communal benefit to encouraging more long-term residents. So, honestly, the difference between 2 and 3 to me is maybe minimal, but like I don't think I could certainly be fine with 2.
Why don't I check with Butch and just see exactly how these are being used and see what we're talking about here? How many,
That's fine. We'll come back to it.
When I see number of bedrooms, and so many of them are 1-bedroom, I'm assuming those are people renting, or 2-bedroom, those are people renting either an apartment or something in their home. But I can talk to him and find out how it's being used. I don't think we're taking anything away from anybody here, but I'm also going to keep arguing for the fact that this is not a long-term renter that we're talking about, or somebody who's there for 30 days. We're talking about what could be a constant stream of multitudes of people on your road, next door to you, whatever. And, and I know we say we have a noise law and we have all this. I've talked to people who've called the police. They don't want anything to do with this. So, or they just go talk to somebody and they stop while the police, and then then the next night it's the same thing. I think that what you do is you put it in the law that you foresee what problems could come up and you stop them without having to have this, having to call the police because somebody's got a bonfire or whatever. You try to write the law in such a way that you avert those kinds of problems, because Laura, I guess it's a real philosophical difference. I don't know anybody who has who doesn't have a short-term rental who likes them. I know the people who come to this meeting who have them, and it's beneficial to them personally, but I have yet to meet anybody who doesn't have one who thinks it's a good idea in their neighborhood or in this town. So, again, here we are, we're talking, and I said this to you on the phone today, we're talking about 5, maybe 10% of the people in town who use this, and let's just say, for the purposes of discussion, that, you know, some percentage of them are residents. Okay, so then we're talking about such a small percentage of people as opposed to the 90 or 95% of people who live in this town who bought their homes because they wanted to live in a neighborhood, in a community. And now they're living next to hotels. And I've spoken to so many people in different towns, and everybody sort of has this feeling that this has been destructive to communities. One supervisor said to me, it hollows out communities. And then I think we talked about that community, not commodity. And so this section, these 2 resident occupied ones were meant to, be less restrictive, not have a limit on the number of them, no cap. If you're doing something this minor, no cap. But if you're going to start increasing the numbers to 5 bedrooms, then I would say, well, there absolutely should be a cap on that. So
I'm saying 3. I'm not saying 5. I'm saying 3.
Okay, but even so, it's let me talk to Butch and just see what's happening out there, and then we can look at it and see if we're actually taking that away from someone. But as I said, an accessory apartment really shouldn't be any bigger than 1 or 2 bedrooms. And I mean, just from a physical perspective,
But but renting the house, a resident can be occupying the house, and they might have more than 2 spare bedrooms in the house, and they may want to rent more than 2 bedrooms in the house. And we're saying
no, I mean, but I think what, and please, I don't mean to speak for you, Jude. It's just I think what I'm hearing from her concerns is that serving that increasing, but not, I know you're not saying 5, but serving this increasing sort of arbitrary thing is like it's putting the profit of a very, very small amount of people, again, a questionably non-existent group of people, based on what I've known being on the planning board from the prior 8 years. That, I mean, if you have, if they're in your house, again, in that kid, not for the attached structure, but if they're in your house, they still have to pull those cars in. They still they'll still be driving around wherever it is. And I just, I get where you're coming from on that. So I'd want to hear what Butch has to say about that constituency. I think there's plenty more to go about in this law in the meantime. And it's, again, this thing we can.
Okay. Well, yeah. Okay. So we'll look at the ones where the owner's not there. So where the owner's not there, we've said 2 things: limited, STR limited, and STR full house. So limited, they're both actually full house. One of them is one you're renting the full house. So let me just kind of take a look at this. So and you could be renting an ADU for that matter. It's just that you're renting an entire unit and the owner is not home. So the point here is so I want to add resident absent, or owner absent, I might call it.
Wait. No, not there.
I know not there, but right. But I'm copying and pasting here.
Oh, I see.
So I'm going to say type 3 owner. I'll call it owner absent, limited. So it's a limited time. STR, I'll say OA, limited. And then the other one would be type 4, owner absent, full. And full is fine, in my opinion, for that. Type 4, owner absent. Well, they're both full house, I think. The entire private residence is both of them entire. Okay, owner absent. I call this extended, if that's okay, because we're saying extended time.
you know, these categories were taken from other laws, and it was just to try to make them simple.
Yeah, okay.
There's a definition and, you know, not, you know, because
Yeah.
then. But
Well, I'm kind of going with my flow is I know we had laid out previously, and I'm trying to stick with kind of how we had laid it out previously. Anyway, so a supplementary business in a private home, which the entire private residence is rented for a total of less than 30 consecutive days, no host owner is present, and which no public restaurant is maintained, HSTR, add the OAL. STROAL. Shall have no more than 2 guests per bedroom maximum. And then we need to describe how many guests total. And I think you mean to say guests there. So I'll put a T in there. Whoops. T in there. Guest total, STROAL. Establishments must have designated local host, which is good, comply with all STR standards. STROAL. Should be rented for no more than a total of 30 days per calendar year, with no more than 10 weekends or parts of weekends included in that total. Weekends including time between Friday and Monday. And I know that we had that weekend thing that was in the current law saying we limited the number of weekends that you could rent, and weekends include any time between Friday evening and Monday morning. So, okay. Any controversy on that or any comments?
Well, we're gonna have to come up with how many bedrooms, but as I said to you, maybe that's something we deal with later, because we could get stuck on that all night again, so. Right, I mean, I think we just gotta keep moving, and no, it's fine, I anticipated that, and as I said, you know, I think we could keep moving and leave that as X at the moment, and that one is fine.
Okay, so, okay, sounds good. Okay, and then the type 4, owner absent extended. Let me just add a OE, OA, E. Okay. And the entire apartment is rented for, rented for more than, you meant to say more than, because
No, because they're consecutive days. You can rent more than 30 days and you don't need a SDR permit.
Right. That's right. Because, right. Private resident for less than 30 consecutive days. Right. Okay. Well, although this one says rented for a total, right. A total of less than 30. So did you mean to say a total of no more than 30 days? So if somebody can only go to 29, this one, you can only get 29. Well, totally.
This is where we get, you know.
That's right. And this is why it's less than consecutive days, because otherwise it would be a long-term rental, and no more than a total of, okay, then you get the total down here. I got you.
Okay. It's confusing because yes, yeah.
Right.
And you know, and if somebody wants to go away and rent their home for 30 days, they don't need a permit for that. 30-day rentals don't need a permit. It's 130. This was, again, you know, taken from another law, and I think there were 11 people who were interested in doing this in Kingston, and it was just to give a little. I think they you know, they had a cap, and this was outside of the cap. It would allow you to do that. You didn't have to fall within the cap. This was just somebody who's going away for a month or two and wants to short-term rent their house, but it was just to give a little relief for these people.
So what I may do, so I'd like to have this description, this 30 days, be a little closer. So what I would tend to do is just move this to the end, so that you're talking. Let me just kind of, and I can always do it back. Just put that there. The reason being, you're talking about renting for less than 30 consecutive days, and then putting this no more than a total of 30 days per calendar year is kind of closer to that, rather than having it at the tail end, because that's the distinction between this one and that one, and having the distinction be at the bottom of the paragraph seemed more difficult. And any one of these is you're running for less than 30 days. So I'm curious that you put the information about less than 30 consecutive days under this definition, when maybe it makes sense to put under the short-term rental definition because you've already said that here. So maybe we just say it's an STR because you've already defined that in STR.
You know, that's fine. I guess sometimes people aren't going to go back and read the short-term rental definition. So it was just trying to put as much information into each one because somebody's going to go, oh, that's me, and not have to go back and say, oh, but in the short-term rental definition, it says this. It was just, maybe it's repetitive, but I don't think that hurts, but you know, whatever you think.
Well, I'm okay, but if we put it under type 3 and 4, why don't we put it under type 1 and 2? Because the same thing's true. I'm just looking to be consistent. Either we put it in all 4 type definitions, or we just leave it in the STR definition and reference that.
And
So
I think all 4 is better. I think it's easier if it's right there. Do
okay,
you agree?
okay. Okay, this is private home, which listening. And which I sneeze here. Thank you. Dwelling. Okay, so we added that. So that's blue. Okay, so we've been consistent then. Okay, so now we're back down here and we start everything with the same, kind of with the same theme. Running for the total less than 30 consecutive days. No public restaurant is maintained. No, the commercial 30 calendar days. Appear with each more than two guests per bedroom, maximum of best guests. Establishments have designated local host defined. Okay, and then we're going up to type 4. Design for less than in which no public restaurants are maintained, or the commercial each SGR. And we're calling it OAE. OAE. SGR. OAE. SGR. OAE. And then close. Establishments should rent it for no more than and I'm just going to move this up here like I did before. So I just put that over here. And private home. I'll say it can be rented for more than the 30 days up above because, okay. So to clarify how that differs from the other one, can be rented for more than 30 total days. But because that's what distinguishes it from the other one. Okay. Okay. So, and then we can just put in how many days per calendar year, no more than X weekends. And we could make that the same as what the current law has. So that as you point out, Jude, nobody's has this going on all year because we limit, I thought it was it 26 weekends and I forget how many days.
Yeah, I would change that. You know, I guess we probably should go back and, you know, everybody on their own should go back and look at the short-term rental committee's report. Because they were, you know, they talk about sunsetting the number of permits and all kinds of things that, you know, we should be thinking about. You know, at the very beginning of this, I asked whether or not there was going to be a will to do any of this. And I don't know that there is, but you know, there's a number of different ways to try to get this under control. As I said, you know, you can limit the occupancy, you can limit the number of days. We know that we can't say that you have to be a resident in order to have one, because, you know, although plenty of towns have this and they're willing to take that gamble that they're going to get sued, where you have to, you know, I mean, Hurley's Law is you have to be a resident. You can't rent your whole house and not be there. You have to live in.
Yeah, but this is the one where we're going to have this type 4 is the one that's going to have a really small percentage able to do it. So we're not going to be allowing a whole bunch of these. This is going to have the most restriction. So I'm expecting type 4 to have a lot of restriction, whereas I'm expecting, you know, the type 1, like we're saying, type 1 will probably have 0 restriction because it's only 2 bedrooms. They're sharing everything. They're right in the person's home. They're not going to put up with any garbage because they're sharing the same living spaces, you know. So this will probably may not have a cap at all. Type 2, you know, it's a little more intrusive to the neighborhood. So type 2 might have a little more of a cap and a little higher fee. Type 3, okay, you're able to go away for the winter months.
No cap.
You might have a higher fee. You might have a higher fee. You might. You know, and then the most restrictive cap would be type 4. So I think that I think we're recommending the restrictions, that the fees be higher and the restrictions be less, so that the cap be lower and the fee be, you know, the cap be higher and the fee be higher for type 4, whereas type 1, the cap and the fee would both be, you know, the cap might be 0 and the fee might be less.
So I do think this is something we all probably need to think about and discuss later. I would like to see us get through more of it. And as I said to you, those are going to be the things that we're going to sit here and debate for sure. Is, you know, how many days does somebody have to endure if they're in a neighborhood? You know, how many guests to allow?
Right.
Those are the things that I think we're going to be debating. So let's leave those for now as X's and move on. That's my vote.
Yeah. Well, that's fine.
I
Okay.
agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. So, now the other thing we have one more definition here, and we have the end of this here. Short-term rental host, a designated adult, yes, who lives within a 10-mile distance from the STR property and is required to be available to promptly deal with emergencies, other STR renter issues in compliance with STR operating requirements in the owner's absence. ZRC discussion requiring violations and building department suggestions. Permit. What's that, Jude? Go ahead.
That was supposed to be a discussion at some point. That's when we go through the rest of the document, we can talk about that. I don't think we need to talk about that out of context.
Okay, so a permit holder should be entitled, well, I kind of read it real quick. A permit holder should be entitled to request a hearing on suspension or revocation before the town supervisor or the hearing officer. And this goes into tying in with the rest of the law, which probably talks about revocation and suspension of permits.
Exactly. And you know, and Butch had spoken to me, and he had said that he was wondering whether or not there was a way to impose fines or, you know, restrictions or revocations or whatever without having to go to court. And you know, so that was something that I found in another law that says, you know, you can have a hearing officer, you can have a, you know, like the grievance board, right? The assessor says something and you know, they've given you an assessment, you don't like it, you can go to a board and grieve it rather than having to go to court. But that's a different discussion. So let's keep going.
Okay. Now the other thing, and I'll ask, I know Connor's opinion, I'll ask Ed and Jude's opinion. So Connor's opinion is, you know, we're at the 1.5 hour mark. I know Connor's opinion is fine to keep going. I don't know how much stamina Jude and Ed have. I don't know how long you guys want to go.
I'll go another half hour.
Ed, how are you doing? Ed, you okay with a half an hour, Ed?
I can devote another half hour to this, sure.
Okay, so we're going to take it from the top then. And Connor, I think you're okay.
I am. I was going to say an hour, but I'll take what I can get. Let's do it.
I would go longer too, because I would just like to see us keep this moving. And I think we started with the hardest part, but let's keep going.
Yeah,
I think we did. The other thing I will say is if we did want to add an extra meeting, I know we meet the second and fourth Monday. If we did want to throw in another meeting, that could be a possibility. So we'll just see how far we go in half an hour here. Okay, so purpose, and this is all, somewhat boilerplate stuff, I think. Local laws enacted in our, this is definitely just defining why we're here. Allow and set regulations on the permitted use, housing units, town of Woodstock, short-term rental purposes, protecting the privacy for residences, and freedom from nuisances, ensuring the value of housing is tied to its use for residential purposes, helping to maintain the affordability of both homeowner and rental units, encouraging the development of appropriate sized inns in the commercial areas of the community where allowed, continuing the use of housing for traditional bed and breakfast accommodations. So I'm fine with that. Anybody have an issue? Okay, moving right along. The intent of this local law, sorry for reading out loud, but anyway, is to regulate the use of residential structures for short-term rental purposes by defining these uses in the town zoning statute, providing quality of life and environmental standards to be met, permitting these uses to be established. Local law intended to apply to all existing and future housing units in the town as requirements for the establishment of short-term rental. Local law is adopted in accordance with Articles 9 and 16 of the town law of the state of New York. Grants to provide local laws, blah, 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 well for the town. Okay, we're good. Okay, section 3, short-term rental description. Short-term rental shall be incidental, and it's interesting because we have a definition down below, but we're getting into it here. Incidental and secondary to the use of the dwelling unit for residential. Incidental. So this is interesting because if somebody only wanted to buy their building and use it only as a short-term rental, it would then not be incidental and secondary because it would be their primary use. So it's interesting that we're starting out that saying that, which we didn't actually just say that in the definition. Shall be incidental and secondary to the use of the dwelling unit for residential purposes, shall be conducted in a manner which does not give the outward appearance of a business, does not infringe on the rights of neighboring residents to enjoy the peaceful occupancy of their residential premises, and does not alter the residential character of the property or the neighborhood. No alteration to either the exterior or the interior of any principal dwelling shall be made that changes the residential character and appearance of the premise. The goal of this section is to preserve the use of residential neighborhoods that promote the attributes of community as opposed to that of commodity. Very nicely written paragraph. To legally operate a short-term rental, all hosts must pay the Ulster County Hotel and Motel room occupancy tax and applicable fees established by the town of Woodstock. With proof of payment of applicable fees and registration of the building department, a host may receive one of 4 types of short-term rental permits, which I know we just redefined them down below, but anyway, following the standards as defined, as described below. So, okay, so the discrepancy between what we said here and what we said down below for an STR. Well, first of all, I'm a uniform kind of consistency person. So if we're going to capitalize short-term rental down here, we ought to capitalize it up top. So I'll either be happy to capitalize it or not. But it would, I would. So go again.
Go for it.
Go for it. All right. Thanks. Okay. So short-term rental. Okay, so we just, I don't know if I need to blue those because that wasn't a significant change. Yeah. But what is significant is the definition down below. We didn't say it should be incidental and secondary to use of the building. And my other kind of question is, we say things here. So the definition, everything else kind of adds to the definition, does not conflict. But the first sentence kind of conflicts, shall be incidental and secondary to the use of the dwelling unit. And I don't disagree with that, but that's not what we said in the definition.
So it should be added to the definition.
So, and I'm just going to copy. I'm going to copy it so we go look at the definition that we can.
I think that's important.
Okay. A short-term rental, accessory use, or a supplementary business. At least one room we had, probably this black one. Okay. So okay, so I think where I'll put it is actually here. And shall be. Okay, so we added this.
Oh, that's good.
Okay, which conflicts a little bit to the, if you're going to do it more than 30 days, but still, it kind of sets a tone, which is, I think, a nice tone to set. Shall be incidental and secondary to the use of the dwelling unit for residential purposes. It's a nice tone to set. So we've been consistent now. Okay, so I appreciate that. To legal appetite, we already talked about that. Proof of payment, a host may receive one of 4 types of short-term rental permits. And I'm going to capitalize that again. And we had a hyphen before, so I'm putting the hyphen in. We either do it or we don't. I'm a consistency person.
Good. You're the detail person. That's good.
As people who work with me for any length of time hear me say, I'm a professional project manager and documenting for my team so that we say what we're going to do and then I go document it, and documentation is what I do all the time. Okay, so I know we just kind of fussed with these a bit.
Mhm.
We fussed with these a bunch, so we need to make make these 4 consistent with definitions. It's updated. All right. So that's just, we won't fuss with this too much here because we already fussed with it a bunch down there.
Yep.
So, okay. So we're just going to go.
Well, no. Oh, so you're going to do that now?
Well, no, I wasn't going to do that now, because either if you wanted to go off and do it, or if you wanted me to go off and do it.
Okay.
But
No,
since
there's more here because it says the number of STRRO or whatever we're going to call it permits shall be unlimited.
Okay. Oh, good.
STR permits can be renewed yearly.
Right. Okay. And that sounds good.
Yeah.
So yes. Yeah. And so for the what we've now renamed the ADU, but the idea is maximum that it would have a maximum days per calendar year that people are coming and going, because you're right. Now you want to limit some more. You can set a cap on it. Renewed year, everything's gonna be renewed yearly. Permits limited ADUs exist at the time of the adoption of the law. Okay, so
that's what was done with the accessory apartments. It was to avoid, somebody coming in and buying a house and then throwing this up, and then all of a sudden we've got more short-term rentals. I mean, I know that there's going to be a cap and all that kind of stuff, but we also have a big problem with enforcement. So I just thought, let's nip it. If you're going to build an ADU, you can rent it as a long-term rental. You can use it for your personal use, or you can rent it for 30 days or more. But it is for people who have them now and not perpetuating that. That's my feeling.
Yeah, except that we kind of changed that around a bunch. We kind of changed the definition because we said that type 1, we said type 1 was going to be you're sharing a house, you're sharing the front door, you're sharing a kitchen. That's type 1. Type 2 said either you're not sharing those things, or you are sharing those things, but you've got a kitchen. So we didn't say STR was an ADU because we said maybe you're not sharing a front door, but you're not an ADU because you didn't have a kitchen, which is why we changed the definition to not ADU, because otherwise we had stuff falling through the cracks. So now we changed the definition to not call it an ADU anymore, because somebody might have a separate entrance, but they don't have a kitchen, and then they're not an ADU. So that's why we're not using the term ADU anymore, because that's
maybe we say to detached structures.
Well, we'd have to go back to the definition. So I think that we need to, I'd rather just kind of skip past this, let it incubate the definitions, and then adjust this to the definition changes we made.
Okay, so let's just go back. So for the limited, do we want it? Is that something that just should be unlimited?
Which one?
The limited one. Do we want the people who are doing it for less than 30 days? That's just anybody can have it who wants it. Should we make that unlimited and also can be renewed yearly?
Well, I mean, everything can be renewed yearly. So, so can be renewed yearly is, I think, belongs everywhere.
But
I
you
feel
know,
like maybe it could be the kind of thing where we treat it as, permits that you have to just apply for the duration of time, so that rather than having some regular process you go through, it's like if you anticipate, okay, I'm going to go away at X time, so I'm going to apply, here's when I'll be away, and that takes care of us having to know when this is happening and keep track of it. So it would be setting parameters like how long before your trip
Well, but I think, but
yeah.
oh, I'm sorry, go ahead. Well, I do think that we had some people on the phone, on the call before, but I don't see them all on now. But I do think we had people that maybe they want to, like, they have kids in school, and maybe they have their kids in school up here. And then when the kids are out of school, they want to be down in the city or someplace else. So we can't assume that everybody who does this number 3, we can't assume that everybody is somebody who's gone for January and February.
right.
They might have might want to have their time away scattered throughout the year. So I don't really see that. But the thing about it should be unlimited. I would worry about making it unlimited. I think we want to kind of keep an eye on it, but not be real restrictive about it. But if we roll it out with a cap, if we find that we're getting problem areas here, then we can reduce the cap. So I might be inclined to cap it, but cap it in a lenient way at the outset, and then make the cap more restrictive if there are problems.
The only thing is just that I feel like this is the kind of thing where, giving this kind of access, I don't think it should be that. I don't know that a cap would help more than, say, be restrictive in the same way you had described earlier. I just wonder if, to some extent you might want to say, okay, like, then how many consecutive days are we going to say they need to register for, or something like that? Like if it's in 15, is it a week at a time or something like that? I mean, for me, saying that you can apply for 1 30-day period a year, like where you are, or depending on how far in advance, a week at a time.
Well, what's
It could be a number of weekends.
Yeah, that's what was explained to me before, because I said 30 days seems like a small number. Somebody might be out of town January, February, March. That's 90 days, and you're only letting them do STR 30 days. And the answer was, well, they might just be STRing on the weekends. They're probably not going to be STRing on the weekdays anyway. So giving in 30 days allows somebody who's gone 3 months to still STR for the whole 3-month period, because they might only be STRing on the weekends. So that's where the 30 days came from. The belief was it wasn't going to be consecutive anyway. And as Judas pointed out, if you do rent for 30 days consecutive, it's a long-term rental anyway. So if you did do 30 consecutive days, it wouldn't be an STR to begin with. So I don't think that we can limit people. If we say total of 30 days per year, no more than 10 weekends, I don't think that we can then tell them that they have to say at the beginning which days they're going to be. Because hopefully if we're going to get Granicus or somebody who is watching the ads and watching stuff that's going to help answer that question of how much are they really renting. So we're expecting.
One of the things that's built into this, and this is one of the things that Butch and William had brought up, is that penalties are built into the law. So that then it becomes like, yes, I'm going to follow the rules because the consequences are so overwhelming that it's just easier to go.
Sure.
It is.
Sure.
And so,
Sure.
yeah, so, and from, again, talking to other people, this category is not one that you really expect people to abuse.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think. Anyway, but
I don't think that they would, but you're still having people in the house next door to you when the owner's not there.
Mm-hmm.
And so there is more risk than having people in the house next door to you when the owner is there. Right. So there is still more risk than if somebody's letting people in their home, sharing their kitchen, sharing their whole house. We all agree that's the least risk to the town.
I think also you can see it's not in this section. It's definitely in the definitions for STRF. I don't know if it made mention to STRL, but uh, if we are allowing the snowbirding thing and then their owner is absent, we should we should probably make it so that there has to be a property manager in that case as well. I don't know if that was clear in
But
the
yeah,
definition, but
it's in there. It's in there. I know it says in there that your host, I know the host is defined in there.
I just don't know if it included because it's not written in the definition for limited STRL, but let me make sure. Yeah, no host. But again, it does say short-term rental host. STR property is required to be available. I would just say we should probably have it be clear that this applies to both STRF and STRL as we are changing them.
Right. It needs a host, right? And I know somewhere we had that, but probably should be here, right? I'll add. I'm just going to add needs.
You can even just say it needs a host, and then the host is just defined later.
We define, yeah, exactly. Needs an STR host. Whoops, sorry, I'm hitting the wrong things here. Needs an STR host. Okay, so let's put it in blue because we did add that. And we are going to add here.
Let's, this is the one where actually Jeff was the one who proposed it, and this be a 3-year permit. And so there's a lot to talk about there.
Well,
STRF or L?
The short-term F, the F.
Yeah.
So I just put in here, I'm just putting notes here. So I'm totally okay with, for number 1, number of STR permits should be unlimited and renewed yearly. Everything should say renewed. So I'm kind of getting to what you said in a second here, but limit to a period of 3 years. Yeah, and that's yeah, I don't know. I'm putting a question mark there just because I'm thinking about it.
Well, that was one that Jeff brought up, and that he suggested that then, if you cap it, then it's not just a few people who have the privilege of being able to do it. That was his suggestion.
Well, the cap, if we cap the number of years, and then you go back on the bottom of the waiting list.
Right.
So we'll get, so it was there for now. I didn't change any of the words. It's kind of there for now. So up here, we'll adjust this to match new definitions, but this looks okay to me. This, we want to, let's see what else it says. Maximum, no more than, we didn't fill in the X yet. Township set a cap. Yep, that's fine. Renewed yearly, limited ADUs. And the thing about this, and again, we're not calling them ADUs anymore. So may change based on.
It's an effort to limit the investor potential.
You want me to do this?
Well, and I guess my thought is, the cap will do a limit, and we can't just assume somebody that has an ADU is gonna, this is the person that's on premise. They're living here when they rent it out. So maybe maybe they are investing to some degree, but we still get community, not commodity, because the person is on premise. So this is still the on premise. So I'm less worried about that being, I think we're still getting community rather than commodity.
Well, I think this was also sort of a nod to the idea that no ADUs, and again, I know we're not talking about ADUs, we've changed that definition, but no ADUs should ever be short-term rentals. They should only be long-term rentals. So this was just a sort of like, okay, we're capping it at what it is, but anything in the future hopefully will become a long-term rental. But that was all that was. And again, you know, a lot of this was things that have been discussed and, you know, and here it is. And it's, you know, it's in a format that we can kind of work through it.
Right.
Not necessarily this is the be all and end all, but these were things that were brought up.
Right. Right. And I never, ever at any time, personally, I have always opposed this idea that the first ADU can't be an STR. I oppose that. The county said it. The county said it ought to be that way. I've been, you'll all hear me say this by now, probably, but I've been a landlord of a long-term rental, and there are people who, if they have one ADU and you tell them they can't STR it, they're not going to long-term rent it either, because nightmare situations can happen, and some people don't want to deal with the risk. Some people don't want to deal with a tenant that doesn't pay rent, and you can't evict them even though they don't pay rent. It's, you know, so it's not clear we're going to get more long-term rentals just because we don't permit an STR in the first ADU. And I'd rather deal with it with the cap. I totally against the idea of this, you know, the first STR can't be an ADU. I don't like it. But anyway,
we didn't put it in there, so we're good.
well, it's in there now. It's in there now. So anyway, we'll see. So anyway, we're not done yet. Okay. So anyway, so this one looks, so so I said lenient cap. I don't know if people agree with that. I think a lenient cap for that, and we'll see how it goes, because we want to
I think we should also just discuss the permitting process, because again, rather than thinking of them as some rotating stock of annual permits that you renew, it could be done a little bit more granularly with some very basic technology to say, you know, if you can apply to it, then the qualifications go into some kind of program that say, okay, and I'm not saying these are the parameters, but maybe the parameters are, okay, you can get it because, you know, your three contiguous neighbors are either away or not away, but they are not also looking to rent their properties at the same time. And there can be sort of equitable software based means of sort of not while still allowing people to do this sort of thing, you know, managing it so you don't get an overflow of transient renters at once. And the block doesn't get taken over for a weekend, you know. I don't know what that would be, but that's just an example.
Yeah. Okay. So, and I'm ignoring my phone. Okay. So, yeah, renewed yearly, and then we'll just go through here, and we're getting in the maximums later, as we said. Setting a cap for sure, and this is going to be the most strict. Not granted any lot within 12. Well, you know, this is a nice idea. I like the idea that we don't want to have these on top of each other. That's a nice idea. So that's a new thing, but I like the limit there.
Yeah, I mean, depending on how the renewal process works, that could be doable too.
Right. Well, and then the limitations based on where you are, because we don't want these all on top of each other. So we'll I'm just going to write still considering. And I'll take out the question marks, but I'll make that blue. Okay. Yes, designated STR host. Oh, that already has that. So we added that to this one, and your wording here. So I'm just going to add this up here in the same wording because this wording is good. STR, and right now it says L, but we'll be changing that based on our definitions. And I'll make that blue. And now we don't need the needs an STR host because we solved that. This already has the STR host listed. Okay, alrighty. So, I'm gonna say start here.
Yeah, I would still go.
What's that?
I would still keep going. I don't know if Ed can tolerate it, but I
Uh,
just am eager to get through this. Connor said he would go for an hour. Ed, if you had it, you reached your limit.
Ed, it's all up to you. How you doing, Ed?
I have other projects I have to attend to. I agreed to do these things for an hour and a half or at most 2 hours. I've been
Right.
doing it since 2019 on this committee.
Yep.
And you've been
we-
wonderful, Ed. I'm so,
Well, I helped write the telecommunications. Connor and I wrote most of the scenic overlay. I mean, I've been involved very intimately. And I've worked very closely with Jude in putting together this 9-page. We saved months by Jude and I, mainly Jude, but I was uh, uh, communicating all along, coming up with a 9-page acceptable document that actually could be passed tonight if we wanted to. So I'm here. I've had a vast experience writing laws for this town. I won't list them all, but you'd be surprised what I wrote, like the tweaker law, the aerial spraying law. I mean, so I'm always here. I'm willing to help to the end, but my time is limited like everybody else's.
I
absolutely.
mean, I do feel like we made some good progress tonight. And if, you know, if in the 2 weeks we have till next time, we could, you know, iron out the consistency between the definitions and then pick it up around standards and fines and stuff, I think we'll be through this and with, you know, a fresh round of changes before we know it. So
Yeah, I think we made good progress. So Jude, did you want to take a crack or did you want me to take a crack? Since I know I was the scribe, did you want to take a crack at making the upper stuff match the match the lower stuff, or did you want me to take a crack at that?
You don't mind.
I will take a crack at that.
This is one of your fortes.
Well, maybe.
Yeah, you already spotted it all. It's,
but not yet.
It's
Okay.
overwhelming. It's a lot. So it's really nice to have everybody else's, you and Connor's eyes on this. Ed and I have been through this, we've been going through it. And, and sometimes I'm like, I can't even look at it today. And so we've been going back and forth a lot. So it's nice to have a fresh set of eyes. And if you could pick up some of those consistencies or inconsistencies, that would be great.
Okay. Well, my main thing is really taking the short-term rental categories section and making it match the definitions that we had, because we changed the RO to something else and the L's, So my plan is really pretty much just to take this short-term rental categories and make it match the definition discussion we had before. So that's what I would like to do. But I can send this out to everybody now, so you have where we are so far. And then when I make my updates, I'll send it out again.
Great.
Okay, so now at the end of the meeting, we do public be heard, and I stay for that. And I know Ed, you're done. And Ed, I want to say I certainly appreciate Jude, Connor, and Ed. But Ed, I am so delighted. Every minute you spend helping the ZRC is of great value. So I thank you for your 2 hours that you gave us tonight.
thank you, Ed.
And I will stay on. Now, what I will ask for is, I'm gonna stop sharing. So again, reminder, 3 minutes, 3 minutes per. And if people need to go a second time, they can go a second time. And if people have a lot more than 3 minutes, then we can talk offline. So does anybody of the public want to, Michael Henry has his hand up. Go ahead, Michael. And you're on mute, Michael.
Yeah, there we go. Let me see.
Yay.
Here's my face. Oh, I'm way down on the bottom. Hi, thank you everyone for all your hard work. I know it's no fun drafting legislation. I used to do that for a job. Just a few things. One big thing I want to mention is all this emphasis on whether the owner is on the premises at the time of rental. I know that we've often talked about not creating standards that are unenforceable. I think we're setting ourselves up for a very unenforceable standard that if the owner is physically present while the renter is there. What does that mean? They can't go to the supermarket, or they can't go to their mother's house overnight, or, I that's going to be impossible to enforce. The other thing I wanted to point out is, I don't know if we're sort of fighting old battles. I think, Laura, you said at the very beginning of the meeting that there really has been very few complaints about noise or garbage or parking in the last couple of years. And Jude, I understand that it sounds like you do still have that problem, and that's a sucky problem to have. But what the purposes of the law do seem to shift every time I come to a meeting. And now it's very much, today it was very much about not having noisy neighbors and disrupting the quality of life and losing the sense of community. I'm almost out of time. I think it's not fair to say that only STR owners have an interest in seeing any value in STRs. There are lots of people who clean houses, do maintenance work, repair work, lawn mowing, who are dependent on STR, the income from STR homeowners, not to mention the businesses in town. And lastly, we keep on seeing this 1% of housing stock number and comparing it to Kingston. I would ask, how many art galleries are there per capita in Kingston? How many concert venues per capita in Kingston? How many restaurants per capita in Kingston? It's the nature of Kingston is a very different community than Woodstock, which is partly a visitor community and always has been. And we're setting it up as community versus commodity. If you limited it to 1% of the long-term, the SDR top category, it's not going to be community versus commodity. It's going to be middle-class people who live here part-time who rent it out versus rich people who leave the house empty 90% of the time. And maybe that's what you want. Maybe you want an empty house rather than visitors next door, but you're probably going to have less of a community. So thank you for listening.
Okay. And thank you. And what I will say about the noise is, even though as a town board member, I haven't kept hearing stuff. I think Jude's point is the problems are still happening because she's aware of, and the issue of people saying the police don't really want to jump in. We heard Jude say that as well. So thank you for sharing the issues, because it's still stuff we need to think about.
And I've been doing short-term rentals since 2008. I had never had a complaint with any of my neighbors. So.
Right. Okay. So, all right. Anybody else want to speak? Heather.
Yeah, I just wanted to first of all thank you guys for all the hard work. I can tell that you guys have spent a lot of time working on this stuff and thinking about this. And I just wanted to point out a couple things that kind of concern me, and not even actually specifically related to my unit, although there are some things of that nature. One thing I know is that there are some people who currently have an owner-occupied permit, and they actually leave their house and go stay at a friend's or a neighbor's while they rent out their entire house. Those are some of your people that I know you're looking out for. And I think you might be missing them in the mix of what you're doing, because they won't be at the house when it's being rented. And they are full-time Woodstock residents. So they vacate their properties. We know that there are some people that fall into that category. And then the other thing that, like what Michael Henry said about policing, resident occupied and the rules around being there when your unit is being rented, I think that that's going to have to take a lot of clarity about what that means. And I think some of the having gone through the renewal process and knowing what an onerous task that is already currently for the town, I do think that trying to have like lots of different kinds of permits that have different windows of availability is going to really create a lot of extra work for them. They didn't even get the letters out for renewals from last year until the end of January. I think that may have had to do with voting for the permit fee increase. But nonetheless, it is a lot of work for them to administer. And I think the more streamlined and straightforward things can be for them, the better job they can do on it. The other piece I will mention, I feel very strongly that like Laura, taking things away from people that they already have is really disruptive. And the way that these short-term rentals work, you list your house and you rent it out in some future time. So for example, somebody in December, while I have my permit, maybe renting my house for the next June. And so there will be no way to police against that because the permit would be valid when I was marketing my house and then my listing would come down. So I think that thinking about the nuance and the complexity of some of these regulations and how they can actually be, how they actually will work, shouldn't be overlooked. I think that, the window when people are renting, people rent houses for the summer in Woodstock for like 9 months in advance, a year in advance, 18 months in advance. So it's something to be aware of because the way that the Granicus supervision will work is really just about when you're marketing your house and not when you're actually renting it. They may be able to report that stuff, but just something to be aware of.
Yeah, good point. Good points. Thank you. Thank you very much. We have Linda and Sarah. Do either of you want to chime in?
Oh, yeah. I just wondered if you were going to actually look at the Hurley Law. I know in the very, very beginning, you guys were talking about that. And I wondered if you were going to look into it and bring up the different parts of it.
I did.
Go ahead.
No, I did look at the Hurley Law.
Yeah, so I had at one point planned that we would, as a group, be looking through it to see if we missed anything. And we may or may not still do that, but I know Jude has been crawling through a lot of different laws. So Jude has looked into it. And if your question is, will we look at it as a group on this meeting, in a future meeting? The answer right now is maybe. If the ZRC has looked at it and we say we've all looked at it offline, we don't feel like there's value to looking at it in this group, we may not. But certainly Jude has looked at it. I've read through it. I do plan whenever we finish what we think our proposed law should be, I'm going to look back again and see if we missed anything as kind of my own checklist. But whether or not we show it in a meeting here will depend on whether or not the ZRC members think there's value to doing that. Because I think I know Jude for sure has looked at it, and Ed and Connor likely have as well.
Yeah, I looked at it. I think it was late last year when we were talking about it.
Yeah, I remember you and Jeff had said you liked it a lot, and I just never heard anything more about it. So I just wondered if you were still considering looking at it or considering parts of it.
Ty had also mentioned it as a really good law. So yes, it has been looked at. The one thing that they have in their law that I don't think Woodstock is going to do is that it does have to be owner occupied and people have to be there on the premises. And I don't think Woodstock's ever going to go to that extreme, although it's not a bad idea. But I don't know that Woodstock will go for that.
Okay, thanks.
Thank
Sarah,
you.
Sarah, did you have anything you wanted to add? Okay, so Sarah, you're on mute. If you had anything to add, you are on mute. Did anybody want to speak again? Well, thank you very, very much. I appreciate this process. I appreciate the ZRC members and the deep dive and the homework that was done before this meeting so that we could review what we did at this meeting. I appreciate the guests that we have besides the ZRC members because you're giving us good things to think about. Heather?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a quick question. I noticed that 1,200-foot rule was a new thing that I hadn't seen specified before. And I'm wondering how you'll decide who gets the permit if there are multiple people who have a permit within that distance.
Well, I guess I know, speaking as a town board member, and I've spoken to Supervisor McKenna, we're really hoping to not yank things away from people that they have. So if we put that in, it may be that we're grandfathering and then we're saying, yeah, but any new ones, we're going to keep that. So if you're already established and have had a permit, we're not looking to yank things. I know Bill and I aren't. We're a quorum of the board is 3 members, so we're not sure who's the 3rd member that might agree. But at least 2 board members I know are not looking to yank things away from people that they have. So I would expect that to mostly happen with new. Okay, you're welcome.
So Sarah says in the chat that she's trying and she can't unmute.
Okay, so what I will do is
Possible she doesn't have an internal mic.
It is possible. So Sarah, I'm going to try to ask you. I'm clicking on, there's a button called Ask to Unmute, and I'm clicking on the button Ask to Unmute, hoping that would pop something on your screen that let you. As Connor says, perhaps your device doesn't have the option. If your device does not have a mic that you can turn on, then, but it looks like, and if you're on the screen, I know that when I look on my Zoom screen in the lower left for me, it's where the mute and the unmute is. This little microphone icon that if you click the microphone icon, it toggles it between mute and unmute. And if you see a microphone icon on your Zoom screen, then you might be able to toggle it.
Mine is on the upper right-hand corner.
Oh, I see it. She says just my phone.
Okay.
Well,
then she should have
yay. Fingers are crossed, Sarah. Fingers are crossed that you're able to.
If not, you could always just submit something to the chat and it does get reviewed after the fact.
Oh, he says her audio got wonky. So if your microphone's wonky and your audio is wonky, then it's hard to communicate. Okay.
I think I'm going to go ahead and make a motion to adjourn, if that is.
I think I saw Jude. I saw Jude wave. So Connor adjourn. Jude seconded.
Ed is gone already.
Ed is going, but a quorum is now 3 because there's 4 of us officially, and so a quorum is now 3, and so 3 of us. So Sarah, I do apologize. Yeah, thanks, Sarah. I see you've added something in the chat. So thanks. And I know, Sarah, I'm sure we'll catch up because I know I see you at different events and different meetings. So I'm sure we'll catch up. Thank you, everybody who attended. I'm going to capture the chat before I get off.
Good night, and thank you so
Thank you
much,
for your
Jude,
work.
for all the hard work. It's
Yes.
a great step in the right direction.
Yeah, good.
Thank you, everybody.
Take care. Have a good night.
Thanks all. Whoop, and I'm getting the chat here. Okay, let me go at the bottom. Okay,